So,
The Artemis
ein
2 mission is a test mission of the Orion.
Artemis 2.
Guck mal, was losgeht.
The Artemis 2 mission is a test mission of the Orion space capsule.
Artemis 2 will be the first time we put humans on this rocket.
We're going back to the moon because it's the next step in our journey to Mars.
We were always going to the moon.
Pushing ourselves to explore is just core to who we are. That's a part of being a human.
And liftoff. We shall return.
Continuing to test out every bit of Orion.
Coming back to Earth, 7 miles a second.
When humanity sets big goals, we can bring together genius from around the world.
You have the best people on planet Earth putting this vehicle together. That's what's up there.
To innovate for the benefit of humanity and to inspire the world through discovery.
And here we go.
Okay.
Good morning from Firing Room 1 at NASA's Kennedy Launch Control Center in Florida. You're looking at a live view of Launch Complex 39B, where the SLS, or Space Launch System rocket, and Orion spacecraft are getting ready to lift off in a little over 10 hours for the agency's
In
Artemis 2
Stunden.
mission. I'm Antonia Jaramillo with NASA Communications, and I, along with my fellow commentators, will take you through today's launch countdown and the rest of this historic mission. NASA will be providing 24/7 live coverage starting with our propellant loading operations and will continue throughout the course of this 10-day mission. Now, our Artemis launch director, Charlie Blackwell Thompson, gave the go to proceed with cryogenic propellant loading at 7:33 a.m. Eastern Time this morning, which means pretty soon teams will start fueling the rocket with cryogenic or super cold liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. You can see on your screen there, it's a view of Firing Room 1. That is where the Artemis launch team is currently on console and is getting ready to launch the SLS rocket and Orion spacecraft. Now, Artemis 2 is NASA's first crewed Artemis mission. This test flight will send NASA astronauts Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Cook, and Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen on a 10-day mission around the moon and back.
Jo.
Now, the countdown
cool.
for this mission started on Monday, March 30th at 4:44 p.m. 4 p.m. Eastern Time. One thing to note about the countdown clock that you see on your upper left-hand side of your screen there is you're going to hear us refer to what are called L- times and T- times. Now, the reason we have these two different references for the countdown clock is because the L refers to how much time is left until, to provide them with some extra wiggle room or some cushion to again just be able to go through all of their operations, continue making sure that everything is on track to be able to meet the opening of that launch window. And also, if they run into any issues throughout the countdown, this also provides them that extra time to be able to resolve them and still make, again, that opening of that launch window. Now let's talk about today's launch window. The launch window is 2 hours long. It opens at 6:24 p.m. Eastern Time this evening. Now, what does that mean, a 2-hour launch window? It means that the launch team has 2 hours in which they can launch today's Artemis 2 mission. So if we don't go right at 6:24 p.m., that is okay. So again, to quickly recap, our launch director gave the go to start our cryogenic propellant loading operations. That means right now the Artemis launch team is currently in what is called the chill down phase for the SLS core stage rocket. Now, the core stage is the first stage of the SLS rocket. It is the orange section in between the two solid rocket boosters that you see there on your screen. Now, chill down basically refers that we are going to be cooling down all of the systems and lines that will be feeding this propellant inside the rocket. The reason we chill down these lines is because we are feeding cryogenic, or again, super cold propellant on board. Liquid hydrogen, to remain in a liquid state, needs to be negative 423 degrees Fahrenheit. On the oxygen side, it's negative 297 degrees Fahrenheit. So very,
Oh Mann, wieso
very
Fahrenheit? Ich kann kein
cold
Fahrenheit.
temperatures. Because of this, we then cool down these lines so that we aren't shocking the system, we aren't causing any potential damage to the hardware, and they're able to receive these super cold propellants smoothly and without issues. So again, we are currently in chill down for both the core stage liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen tanks. Following chill down, the teams will then start what is called slow fill. This will officially
Langsames
mark
Füllen.
the start of propellant loading. That means that we will actually start loading that liquid propellant on board the rocket. Now, as the name suggests, slow fill basically refers to slowly start to load that propellant. The reasons they do this is because the teams are wanting to closely monitor that there isn't any leaks or any issues when we are starting our propellant loading operations. Now, following slow fill, teams will then transition into what is called fast fill. Similarly to how slow fill refers to going slowly, fast fill means we're going to go at a much faster rate. This will be the bulk of our propellant loading operations, where teams are going to be in fast fill for the majority of the time. Now, following fast fill, we will then transition into topping. Topping just means that we are going to finish that last little bit that is needed to get us to 100% level in those tanks. Now, because these are gases, these are liquid gases, as the temperatures start warming up, those gases will, that liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen will start venting off into a gas. Because of this, following topping, teams will then transition into what is called replenish mode. Replenish means just that. They're just going to constantly be replenishing these tanks so that we make sure we're at 100% level and we are at that flight ready level for when we enter terminal count.
Okay.
Now, I'll be reporting out as each of these operations and milestones are underway. Our Artemis launch team, they're currently communicating with each other through these separate communications channels that I'll be tuning into. And I'll make sure to relay as that information gets underway and they report those milestones and call-outs out. Now, while we wait for slow fill to get underway, let's do a little bit of a recap of the entire countdown. Again, we said we started on Monday at 4:44 p.m. Eastern Time. So shortly after the countdown started ticking down, teams filled the water tank for the sound suppression system. Now, this is done to help protect the rocket and the supporting ground structures that are there at the launch pad from the extreme heat and the power that's generated from the rocket's exhaust. And it also helps suppress the sound that's produced at liftoff. Now, the Orion spacecraft, the core stage, which again is that first stage of the SLS rocket, and the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, or the upper or second stage of SLS, were also all powered up for launch. The Orion and the core stage flight batteries have been charged. And at 4:14 a.m. Eastern Time this morning, teams started what is called the air to gaseous nitrogen, or GN2 changeover. Now, this is a very important milestone to meet. Our launch director, technical assistant, Mari Forrestdale, kind of described it to us. It's when we're really getting ready to get the party started. The reason for this is because it basically signals the team that we are on track to be go for propellant loading later in the countdown. And the reason for that is because the air to gaseous nitrogen changeover basically is helping prevent any potential fire hazards. It's creating a clean, inert environment inside the vehicle so that then when we are putting in those hazardous propellants, there aren't any issues. So that started at 4:14 a.m. this morning, and it was completed at 7:14 a.m. Eastern Time. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the countdown for Artemis 2 does have certain built-in holds throughout the count. We are currently in our first built-in holds, which lasts 2 hours and 45 minutes total. Like I said, we're still currently in it, and we do have roughly about 38 minutes and counting until we exit that first hold. The other additional built-in holds that have been put in the countdown, again, these are pauses that the team has purposely inserted to make sure that they can just get some extra cushion time if needed. That next one happens once we reach what is called all stages replenish. Now, all stages replenish just means that now the entire SLS rocket is fully fueled, and teams are now just constantly replenishing all the tanks to make sure that it is always at 100% until we get into the final 10 minutes of the countdown. So when we reach all stages replenish, that's when the teams are going to be ready to send our astronauts to the launch pad. Because of this, the teams have inserted this extra hold. It's an hour and 10 minutes that will happen again when we are at all stages replenish. Following that, we then have just one final hold in the countdown, and that happens when we're then getting ready for terminal count. It'll be a 40-minute hold, and it will happen roughly again about 40 minutes before we enter then the last 10 minutes of the countdown.
Auch hier bei mir zu sehen. Dann am 3. April
So to quickly recap again, our launch director, Charlie Blackwell-Thompson, she gave the go for teams to start propellant loading. We are currently in chill down for the core stage liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. Up next will be slow fill when we start loading that liquid propellant, and I will report out when that is underway.
Da ist die Orion dann so weit von der Erde entfernt wie noch nie ein Mensch zuvor. Und dann am 7. April um 20:29 Uhr, was ist jetzt hier los? Okay, egal. Am 7. April um 20:29 Uhr wird es dann einen Funkspruch zwischen der Artemis Crew und der ISS geben, der wahrscheinlich auch live verfolgt werden kann. Und dann am 9. April um 24 Uhr dann eine Crew-News-Konferenz, wo halt die letzte Pressekonferenz aus dem Weltraum sein wird. Und dann am Sonntag, dem 12. April 2026 um ca. 15:30 Uhr wird dann die Rakete um ungefähr 17:10 Uhr dann hier wassern. Ja, im Atlantik irgendwo. Da kann man dann übrigens auch die Bergungsschiffe der US Navy live sehen. Und das alles könnt ihr bei mir verfolgen. Ich freue mich schon drauf.
Deswegen schaltet einfach um 0:24 Uhr meinen Livestream an, und wenn ihr jetzt fliegen, einfach in 12 Stunden wieder zurück zum Mond.
Okay, passiert hier jetzt noch irgendwas, oder?
Artemis 2 ist einfach schon wieder verschoben. Okay, April. Im Gegenteil.
Irgendwie ein bisschen langweilig so. (24/7) Artemis 2 Mission Coverage. NASA.gov Ways to Watch. Also falls ich gerade nicht online sein sollte, dann könnt ihr da gucken. Auf NASA.gov.
Im Gegenteil, ihr könnt den Start schon heute um 0:24 Uhr live auf meinem YouTube-Kanal verfolgen. Also eigentlich morgen am 2. April ab 0:24 Uhr startet die Rakete, und ich werde den Start live für euch übertragen. Heute um 0:24 Uhr live auf meinem YouTube. Ihr könnt den Start schon heute Start schon heute um 0:24 Uhr live auf meinem YouTube-Kanal verfolgen. Also eigentlich morgen am 2. April ab 0:24 Uhr startet die Rakete und ich werde den Start live für euch übertragen. Start schon heute um 0:24 Uhr live auf meinem YouTube-Kanal verfolgen. Also eigentlich morgen am 2. April folgen. Also eigentlich morgen. Also eigentlich morgen.
Okay, ich würde sagen, wir gehen mal auf nasa.gov oder NASA Plus. So, das schauen wir nachher mal an. Ich würde sagen, wir sehen uns nachher mal wieder. Aber jetzt mache ich jetzt gerade mal aus bei euer Fabi Storme. Achso, und ja, schaltet nachher um 0:24 Uhr am besten ein, ne?